that I had success in the past. And what I had working for me is I knew I did have people in my life if I would open up to them. And I also knew that I knew how to help people achieve goals and get out of things. I just wasn't taking it on myself. But those things were working for me, and they were in my space, and it was just time to access to that.
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. What's up, my friends? Welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast. This is conversation number 63, and I'm so excited that you're here with me today. My guest is the one and only Natalie Jill. She went from rock bottom and turned her life around. She is the author of Aging in Reverse and the host of the Leveling Up podcast. And I couldn't be more happy to have an opportunity to speak with her today. You can find this conversation and all other podcasts at kristoflewis.com/podcast. And you can find me on Instagram at Kristof Lewis. So without further ado, welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to have you here. I was telling you, I literally just learned about you 2 days ago by hearing you on a podcast with my friend Andy Dane Carter. Andy's been a personal mentor of mine. I really look up to the guy in a lot of things he does. He's really helped me with this podcast and to develop on a personal basis and a professional basis. So I really like the guy. I listen to his podcast religiously, and I heard yours. And it just really struck a note with me. And I told you why in a direct message. We listened to it. We were on a road trip, my wife and I. And as soon as I got home, I wrote you. And I'll probably get into that a little bit later. But the reason I really wanted you on here, not only because it was awesome, but because I focus mainly on career transitions and trying to help motivate, inspire people. But even on a much deeper level than that, just give them the courage and I always say these real life breathing examples, these real human beings that do this themselves. And you did just that. I mean, it blew me away. Your career transition was the ultimate one, in my opinion. And well, in your words, you said, you had I believe you said massive credit card debt. You were not paying your mortgage, just so you could get out of this. And
it was a mess.
It was a mess. Yeah. $1.4 million in debt and all this stuff. So I want to talk to you because some people would just give up hope and throw in the towel,
of course,
and just not move on from then. But another thing that was really important to me that you said that you were consciously was I was overweight too, and then now you run a fitness program. So just walk me through the mindset of that transition for our viewers. That's incredible.
Gosh, so I'm going to take you back about 12 years.
All right.
So 12 years ago, before my daughter was born, I was working in corporate America, and I had what looked like this perfect life. I did everything I was supposed to do. I went to school. I went to college. I got married. I had the kid. I did all the things I was supposed to do. I had the good corporate job, and it was, I'm a Generation X. I was doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But I never fully felt like I was living my calling or that it was the right thing for me, but I never could put a finger on it because I felt very responsible. I'm doing the right things.
Yeah.
And in fact, I owned, the house I was living in was the third house I'd owned, and really smart. I put the 20% down, and I didn't do any of the crazy mortgage stuff. I did all the things I was supposed to do.
Sure.
And what happened was, I think that there's a way that the universe sort of checks us when we're maybe in our ego or we're not being truly authentic or something's going on. And I think that's what happened to me truly. So this was back in 2007, 2008. And if you remember what was happening there, the house market had crashed, the stock market had crashed. We were really having some serious financial issues in this country. And many people listening to this can relate to this and remember this. So I was not one of the only people going through this. But what was happening to me was I just had a baby. I had gained a lot of weight when I was pregnant, and I found myself going through a divorce. So I had those things happening at one time. and the market had crashed. And I now knew that my corporate job was not going to work out for me in the way that it was, because I was traveling full time and I was going to be a single mom.
Yeah.
So I had this like tons of pressure on me. Like, how the heck am I going to manage and shift and do all these things when I'm now a single mom and I'm depressed and I'm overweight and I can't afford things. Everything just felt like it was falling on me.
Yeah.
And to make matters worse is, I think that a big way we get out of problems and shift is by connecting with people and sharing and having friends to talk to.
And
I had friends, but not where they knew what was going on in my life. Like it was very fake. It was very surface level. And I felt at the time like I couldn't really share what I was struggling with and going through. I felt like nobody would understand. I was embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
It was this really weird place.
That's a tough place to be at when you think, and I remember you saying that specifically, like everybody thought that I had this amazing or perfect life even. So how could I, muster up the courage to tell them like, hey, it's not perfect. Like this sucks right now. Like I'm not happy and things are not going my way. And frankly, they're just going downhill really, really quick.
Yeah.
So how did you manage to like actually muster up the courage to talk to somebody or just, because that's at a certain point, like you're hitting rock bottom in your own world and you have to pick yourself up from that.
Well, it got worse before it got better. I had to make a decision, and I had taken a voluntary job demotion. And I had decided that I wasn't going to be doing what I was good at in my job. I was going to be doing something I didn't really want to do, just to keep a job and plug through. But I was taking a pay cut, and I had to make some serious decisions with the divorce and being a single mom. And I tried to be responsible and renegotiate my mortgage at the time. And this was back before all the mortgage companies really knew what was about to happen, and they wouldn't budge with me. So I was like, okay. So I started researching foreclosure laws, and I was like, okay, well, I'd never been in credit card debt my whole life. I'd always been very responsible, and I'm literally researching foreclosure laws. And I was like, okay, if I stop paying my mortgage, if I stop paying it, I have about 8 or 9 months before they can even come to me to kick me out of my house. And I'm going to save money and be able to get myself out of this hole. So I made this decision just based on survival. Like, I tried to renegotiate. You're not letting me. So this is what I'm going to do. And it was a very hard decision. And I didn't understand how much that was going to impact me at the time until I went to go put gas in my car and I was declined. And when I called American Express, and I remember this conversation like it was yesterday, like, hey, I've never been late on a credit card payment. Why did you decline my payment? And they said, well, Natalie, you're $1.4 million in debt. My heart sunk.
That's like, it's crazy, but what's even crazier to me is that like you said it twice now, like quote unquote, you did everything right. You did what you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then here we are at this point where you can't even put gas in your car. And I feel like that's got to be a really scary place. And I can imagine that a lot of other people, if it's not gas, it's something else in their life where maybe they just didn't imagine that they'd wind up there and everything seemed like it was going good. And I think when you're getting a lot of these, again, quote unquote, wins or whatever it is in your life, and then you start to like, oh my gosh, you almost blindsides you, and you're starting to research things that you never thought that you'd ever research. Wow, like what do I do here? And I think it just kind of, because you get cold cock, it can kind of knock you off balance and you don't really know which way to go at that point. Yeah,
I was really scared, and I was also really sure that I was in a rock bottom, and I was super depressed. But I also remember thinking and feeling like, okay, I'm so depressed right now. I feel really scared and alone, and I don't know what to do. But I have a daughter, and I need to move forward for her. And I'll tell you what I had working for me, because I'm really sharing a doomsday thing, but what I had working for me was that I had success in the past. And what I had working for me is I knew I did have people in my life if I would open up to them. And I also knew that I knew how to help people achieve goals and get out of things. I just wasn't taking it on myself. But those things were working for me, and they were in my space, and it was just time to access to that. To access those things.
And it's funny how that works, because I'll share something personal. Like, I talk to people all the time on this podcast as well, and in their personal lives off, camera. And I try to give them the best advice I can and talk to them to the best of my abilities. And then I look inward on myself and I'm like, why can't I apply this? Like, I can give everybody all this great advice and help them as much as I possibly can, but I struggle so much with myself. It's so difficult to take my own word and then actually act on it. So that resonates very deeply with me, that it's so difficult to do that. But you knew within you, you said that you were coaching these other people, or you had the ability to help other people, so that you knew you had it within you to be able to help yourself as well. You just had to pull the trigger and do it.
Yes, and that's where I had that first transition is realizing, okay, I don't want to be here anymore. This is a really sucky place to be. So what would I have told somebody else to do? What would I have told them?
Yeah.
And I had to start taking those actions on myself.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you have to kind of separate yourself from yourself, or at least that's kind of how I look at it, when I'm thinking about it, when I just can't seem to pull myself up, and I'm like, dude, you just got to like stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
And you really just need to, like, why can't you take your own advice? Like, really, if somebody was talking to you and they needed your advice or they needed your help, you would allow them to just like be down in the dumps and you wouldn't like give them a hand to help them out of a rut. Like, you need to do that for yourself, and you just like, dude, you need to be brutally honest with yourself,
Yeah. So that's what I did. I mean, I literally had this talk with myself, and I made a decision that I'm not going to be here anymore. I'm going to shift. I'm going to change. And I decided that. And then the next thing I did was I made a vision board. I literally made a vision board of every possible thing that I could dream of or would want. And I remember thinking to myself, if I can't change my life in reality right now, I can change my thinking, and I can start pretending like 100%. I'm the person living in the vision board, and that has to work. 100%. And it did.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does work. So what you don't see behind you, you see all these books and all this stuff from my military career, but what you don't see behind you is I have 2 huge whiteboards spanning about most of the back of this wall right here. And about a quarter of all my whiteboard space are goals of mine, long-term goals. Yeah. So 2 things. 1, I look at this every single day of my life. I read it top to bottom. I have short-term, long-term goals, all the goals in between from A to Z, right? And then the number 2 thing is that I heard you say the vision board. Now, I love that. And that's one of my goals this week, is to create something like that. Because,
I love it.
Even though I fully, and I talk about it a lot, is, working on ourselves first, working on our minds first, and being able to tackle that before we tackle external things and maybe material things, if that's what we want. But part of that, like being able to visualize it, like my wife and I and my family moved away from the beach for work, up near, we're Washington, D.C. now. We want to move back to the beach. And so like even things like, hey, if you want to take this advice that we're talking about right now, like I'm literally going to get like a house on the beach. I'm going to put it in front of me, like next to my board, because I know that we want to get back there eventually. And I know that when I look at that beach house every single day, I'm going to be like, well, sitting here doing nothing, feeling sorry for myself is going to do 0 for me getting to that beach house, So I don't care what it is. Like, if you want to have a better job, if you want to, like, again, we talked about career transitions. If you're down in the dumps, like Natalie is here, or was, I should say, you were down in the dumps, and like, wow, that's a really tough spot. And not a lot of people can handle that, but you got to start, like you said, within, and you got to take your own advice. You got to pick yourself up off your feet, brush yourself off, and doing that vision board. I really like it, because engaging yourself every single day, I think, will help put you on that same track, or the track that you need to be.
Yes. And I still, till this day, I mean, years later, I still create vision boards like every 6 months. That's because awesome. I still want more for my life and more and bigger things. So it's a constant that now vision board's not woo. You don't put it up there and it just happens. It's not like osmosis.
Absolutely
like you just sit in front of it and it just happens. Yeah. So what it does do is it changes your thoughts and your feelings, and then you start taking different actions. So like if you create a vision board of what you want and what's possible for you, and you start doing what I did, was I would look at it and I would say, okay, the girl living in this vision board, what would she be eating? What would she be doing? Who would she be hanging out with? What would she be listening to? And I found that it was very different answers than what I was actually doing.
Yeah.
And that's what started me changing my actions.
No, and I love that, updating it every 6 months, because how in the world could you think that, all right, I'm going to bust my ass, I'm going to get myself to this place that I want to be, and then once I'm there, I'm just going to like, throw in the towel. I'm just going to like hang out, and how can you expect to keep it? Like, that is the wrong mentality. So no matter what, however you quantify success when you get there, like update that shit, like push yourself even more, like, because if you stop pushing yourself, you're going to start to slowly slip backwards. And then I think you're going to much more easily find yourself in that place that you were before. And then it's like, God, now you got to start the whole process over again. Like so you're in the fitness, clearly. So for other people listening, like I've used this analogy before. If you're working out and you're working out consistently, so those small gains, looking at your goals every day, doing a couple reps every day, but then you stop completely for a long time, it's a lot harder to get back to where you were again than, if you had just not gone for the weekend or whatever it is. So you have to maintain this. And the same thing goes for like pumping your brain too, like reading and learning every single day. Like how do we learn better? How do we read better? You got to do these things consistently. And I know, like I've said it before, but for your information, like I started this 14 or 15 months ago. Like never did I ever dream about doing a podcast, but here I am, like absolutely honored to be talking to you. And I just like reached out to you 2 days ago. Like that kind of stuff's crazy to me. And so, but I didn't just get here. Like clearly you can go back, like this is conversation number 63 and they come out once a week. So you can go back 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 weeks and be like, whoa, dude, like that audio quality sucks. Like he can't get words out. He can't articulate himself. But I started, and just when you said you were at the rock bottom and then it got worse, it doesn't matter. You knew that you had to start. And even if you started and you were walking backwards, you were continuously learning what not to do. But the important part is that you started and you made a decision up here to, better yourself and get you out of that position.
Totally.
I love your podcast. I'm going to start listening to it now. For the record, I haven't yet, but I looked at it. I looked at you a little bit. I had like not much time to like go over your and look at you, but I looked at your podcast and I love the title, Creating Everything from Nothing.
Yes.
And I love that. It's funny because mine has always been conversations with inspirational people, but I've picked up a new segment where I have solo podcasts as well. So I've created this like umbrella name, if you will, that says Create Your Career. So when I saw Creating Everything from Nothing, I was like, man, this is like right up my alley as much as I thought, because you can create anything you want. And I'm sure you have your own interpretation, and I'm sure there's a million different interpretations and interpret it however you want. But I love it. Like you can have physically nothing. You can be $1.4 million in debt. You can't even put gas in your car, and you're going through a divorce. You have a new kid. Like that's super tough for some people, for anybody, I would think. But you have the possibility to do what we just discussed. If you start applying that, you can create everything and you can start from nothing. So that's why I love that. And is that what does it mean to you?
What holds us back so many times in life is that we feel we're very stuck in our stories and what's happened to us.
Yeah.
And if we stay stuck there, we can't create different results. So one of the themes that's come up heavily on my podcast, interviewing people, and then it's what I talk about in my new book, Aging in Reverse, is this whole theme of what are these false assumed truths, these made up stories that we've told ourselves about our past, because literally, like, if you take away all that past, like, anything's possible. So it's very real that we're stuck in our story and what got us here. But everybody is a new person each day. Like, you could literally change your whole life by changing your thoughts and your actions from today on.
I absolutely love it. And Aging in Reverse is quite beautiful. I love describing things as beautiful because they're beautiful to me. So Aging in Reverse is amazing. I tell people go, Chris, how are you? I go, I'm freaking great, because I'll be 32 years this year. 32 years old, and I feel better than I've ever felt before. Sure.
That's amazing.
I have some shit going on, and I have some medical stuff going on that I never thought, would happen before. But like mentally, I am tuned. I am fine-tuned, and I'm very sharp. And I know that with my mind, if it's right, when I'm able to start working out again, because I can't right now, unfortunately, but when I can do that, I know that I'm going to be all right. And I know that time's eventually going to come, because I'm not going to take a no for an answer. So you can, I feel like, age in reverse. And I just talked about it last night. Like, I hate hearing like, oh, I'm 30, 40, 50 years old. Like, I don't care. Like, how old do you feel? You're as old as you feel at heart. You're as old as you feel in your mind. So to me, Aging Reverse is a great title, because I feel younger than when I felt before, because my mind has expanded, because I am creating everything from nothing constantly and trying to better myself every single day. So that's amazing. And earlier you said you started off with stuck in our stories, and it kind of coincides with what you're saying of some people can't pick themselves out of the rut because they're feeling sorry for themselves. And that's what I think kind of coincides with each other, is you might be you're stuck in your story, like you think this is the only way that it can be.
Well, it's not that we just get stuck in our story. We get stuck in our story, but then we look for validation around it. So we say, like, this happened to me and this sucks. And because of that, there's this. And then we look for people to say, you're right, that sucks. And that doesn't help us, because what that does is that just validates where we're stuck and where we're feeling. And there's no possibility of shifting or growing out of that.
So, yeah. So you're saying people are looking for validation for their story, that they truly are stuck in their story, and they're looking outwards. And it kind of, I guess it makes sense, because you were saying earlier that you were afraid to reach out to other people because they thought you were in the story. So if they thought that you had this, you know, quote unquote perfect life and things were going well, and then you had to be vulnerable and you had to tell them all these things that, wow, maybe when you told them this, oh my gosh, what are they going to think? And maybe they truly are all across the board. They're just going to validate that I am stuck now where I am and there's no way out. But ultimately, like, one of the things you've said multiple times is that it's you. It starts with you.
Yeah. Or, and also the same thing could have gone if I did reach out to somebody and I said, gosh, my life sucks right now. It's all this stuff is miserable. And somebody were to say, you're right, that sucks. Again, it doesn't help me. That all it does is validate where I am right now, right then. So what would help is, like, I hear you and I'm compassionate for you, and let's look at a solution out.
Yes.
Because that's, you know, otherwise we do just stay stuck in our diagnosis, our story, our issue, or whatever. A big theme of my new book is about that. I call it false assumed truths. So when people say, what do? I say, I kill fat for a living.
Hell yeah.
It's not just the fat on our bodies, which you would think from fitness nutrition, but it's what I call false assumed truth. It's all these beliefs that are holding us back from our goals in our life.
I really do like that. And it all is those beliefs. And I was talking again about my wife. Like, we talk a lot about it. And actually, I want to go into that because I want to tell people why I reached out to you. Well, it was for a couple of reasons, but one of the main reasons I reached out to you. And I think a lot of times we manifest the things that, you know, we suck at. Like I was saying, so I started reading a lot because I can't work out. So I've kind of substituted that time. But I was like, man, I'm a shitty reader. Like, I can't read fast. I'm really bad. And I was telling myself that all my entire life. And I was like, that's bullshit, man. Like, that's bullshit that you're telling yourself that. Like, break out of that mold again. Like, stop feeling sorry for yourself and just read more and learn how to read. Like, you can't expect to be a good reader if you've never practiced to be a better reader. Like, if you can be better at working out or be a better speaker or be whatever that you want to be better at, why can't I be a better reader? And pivot into one of the main reasons I contacted you is because we listened to that podcast. And as I had started with this podcast, it's truly inspirational. And I loved the vulnerability that you spoke about in your life that we've kind of described here as well. And my wife has not truly enjoyed what she was doing. And we listened to your podcast, and then we turned off the podcast. We just sat there in silence for a little bit, and we looked at it. Well, I'm driving for those listening. I'm driving at the time, so we quote unquote, looked at each other for a little bit and talked. And then we got into it like hot and heavy, like real, like passionate talk, and very, very empowered after listening to you guys. And it ended up with her right there in the vehicle, emailing her boss and saying, and they separate it fine. There's no harm, no foul there. But the bottom line is we listened to you guys talk. And I told Andy the same thing, like immediately. I emailed you, I emailed him. Yeah. And I was like, listen, man, like, love it. You guys really put us on a good spot. And my wife contacted me at work today and she said, I can't tell you how good I feel. I feel amazing.
Oh, it's amazing. I love it.
And so I wrote you and I was like, a lot of times, and I get the same thing too. I was like, are people really getting stuff out of what we're talking about? And I just had to know, like, I had to tell you, like, that was life shifting, like, absolutely.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I love
pivot, it. So I told you guys anyways, and I won't prolong on it too much, but I'm just saying, like, things like this.
I love that.
Listening to these podcasts, like, they're not just passive. They're passive if you don't take them into action. Like, I always talk about, like, cool, I'm reading a book a week for a year. Great. But am I comprehending any of it? Am I applying any of it? So are you listening to a podcast that inspires you and you feel good in the moment and then you just go on about your life like you said? Are you stuck in your story? Or are you actually doing something about it? And a lot of times I do see people just constantly like taking in this information passively, which I think is absolutely pointless, and then they're not applying it. Do you see a lot about that? And if you do, how can we kind of shift people's mentality to be like, hey, you can't be so passive on this knowledge intaking and you have to apply it.
I don't know that people say, like, they'll tell me I'm not taking action, but what I feel I hear a lot is people will reach out with they'll hear my story or they'll hear something and then they'll go to like, what's the one thing, or like, what's the one pill I need to take, or the one supplement, or the one course, or the one this. They want the one answer.
Yeah.
And so like, then it makes me question, like, did you listen to what I shared? Because it really does start with your mindset and your state and your decisions and your vision and your passion and your purpose and all of that. And that's really with anything you want to change or shift in your life. It has to start with you and that mindset piece. So what comes up for me is, people want to skip that part.
Yeah, they do want to skip that part, or they just
want the quick fix.
I literally just, I wrote that down. I said quick fix. Like, that's what people want. They want the quick fix. And I told my wife, she never worked out. She's a great example. She's doing amazing things. I'm so proud of her. But she never she's been a runner her whole entire life, cross country, but she never lifted until we had her baby daughter. She's 3 months old last week. And now my wife's working out for the first time. And I said, listen, like, we're going to take it easy. And she's like, oh yeah, don't worry. I was like, no, you don't get it. Like, we're going to take it easy with the weights for like at least 6 months. Like, we're doing lightweight. We're going to get your body into it. And I'm obviously no trainer by any means, but I know she's never done it her entire life, and we're going to take it easy. And I was like, you can't get frustrated. And quick fix. It's not a quick fix. We don't want you to get your summer beach bod ready and look good for 3 months out of the year. Like, I want to develop you, or help develop you for the rest of your life, results that are going to last. And frankly, that's not going to be a quick fix. Like, you need to be patient with yourself.
I love that. Yeah. And absolutely.
The last thing I wanted to touch on is I talk about a lot of things. We talk about the career transitions, obstacles in your career, and we've talked about that. There was that huge shift. So I guess I'll digress and say two things really quick. And I want to hear, one, I love helping others. I think it's great to help yourself, like we talked about. But I think after you can start to pick yourself back up, and maybe even during that process, if you can be vulnerable, and I encourage people to share their stories, to share your stories and help others. But I always like asking people, why do you choose to help other people?
I choose to, I think everybody has a gift. Everybody, no matter who you are listening, you have a gift of some sort. And I think by not sharing it, it's almost being selfish. Like, we're all here for a reason, and everybody has a voice that matters. Everybody has a gift to share. And to me, what else is the point if we're just going to stay to ourselves and, play it safe?
You're absolutely right.
So I feel that focusing out and sharing our gifts is what life is about. It's about community. It's about connection. So I guess that would be my answer to that.
And it's an amazing answer, and I love it. And those are for all the reasons that I do it as well. Like, what's it about? Like, I don't want to go through life like sharing these victories and frankly experiencing the losses and the failures with other people is what bonds you, and that's living life for me. So I do love that answer. And the second part of that was the importance of self-education. I'm very, very fond of self-education. I do know that, you went to the University of Maryland and you got a degree, so you have had some formal education, but I do see that you wrote, you were a D student as well. So obviously, you had success, and then you had this rock bottom, and then it got even lower. And then here we are again.
I have very strong opinions about education in school. So I was an A student in anything I was interested in. If I wasn't interested in it, I was a D student. Just the way, and I feel like that's still my life. If I'm interested, I learn it and I excel. If I don't, I don't.
Yeah. No, I'm the same exact way. And my dad always told me that in high school. He's like, for a while, he was like, dude, I just don't get it. Like, what's going on here? And then he saw the progression as I got older, and I did really well in some of those classes. And I didn't even have to think about it. Like, I aced them and I wasn't even trying because I was
because you were interested.
I was interested, and I was absolutely interested. And then there's like math and all that crap. Like, I was like, dude, this is not for me whatsoever. And then I went to college and I dropped out of college. And then I found all of this. I found all these podcasts, and I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, I just wish I knew about them earlier. Like, that's my fault ultimately, but not until I found all these podcasts and these great self-help books and everything that you're engulfed in. I was like, wow, I love learning. I love reading, and let's just roll with this. So I absolutely love that answer.
Just get the right information. If school was based on, if teachers were paid more and we had better quality teachers that were actually great presenters and teachers, the way that you see on a lot of top podcasts or whatever, then we wouldn't be so concerned with kids tuning out and not paying attention and diagnosing them instead. Because I think sometimes ultimately it can be the teacher.
No, absolutely. If somebody is standing in front of you and lecturing for 90 minutes, that is the least that is the worst way to get that. You're going to retain maybe 10% of that information, as opposed to listening to something and maybe doing it yourself, and you're going to get upwards of 70, 80, 90% retention. So I absolutely agree there. And I definitely agree that we can't have a single bar to qualify people, or quantify what is this person going to be good at. And because I did terrible in school, like I was just telling you. And
totally.
There's
because you can have a terrible teacher that's boring and not engaged, and then it's the student's fault now for not paying attention. So it's like where's the ownership on that one? So I don't think that's any prediction. I'm definitely, I'm not a fan of the way the current education system is with that, with grades. I don't think it does. I think we take all the creative people that are actually super successful, end up being amazing entrepreneurs, and we tell them that they have ADD and we try to medicate them. I think that's a broken system.
Yeah, and that's very important to me as well. That's why I brought it up, and I am on a mission, quite literally, to it might seem impossible and this might sound crazy, but then perfect. That's exactly what I say. Mm-hmm. But part of this is I'm on a mission to change it. So I want to get everybody's opinions on it. I'm reading books about it, and I'm writing essays about it. And I think that's what it starts with. The more people realize that it doesn't just have to be us sitting in a classroom lined up in rows getting lectured at, then we can spread the information, and slowly we can change this massive system and be able to better ourselves, and to be teaching emotional intelligence at a younger age, and just be better human beings. So
creativity is what's going to shape our whole world. I mean, if we're not okay with kids tuning out and daydreaming and being creative and moving around, we're being very dated,
because you're not keeping the kids' attention clearly if they're wandering off. Because I was bored, quote unquote, bored, and really I am never bored now. Not 1 second am I bored.
That's how I feel.
I love having these conversations with you.
My poor daughter is torn in between. We have her dad and I definitely are a little bit different on grades. Like, he was that straight A student that feels it's very important. So she gets torn, and I'm like, but I see me and her. So it's like, she has a bad grade, I'm like,
Well, you want to give them, and I'm, for me, at least what I'm going to try to do, and granted, I have a 3-month-old, not, a teenager or anything, but because my wife is more formal education, I'm more self-education, but she's very familiar with my opinion. So we just want to give her the options, give her the information, and allow her to deduce the best information herself when she's of that age.
I love it.
Natalie, I absolutely have loved our time. I've loved all the answers to all the questions, and I just think it's so cool. I just want to make a special note to everybody real quick before we end this, that I listened to Andy's podcast with Natalie guest starring. It was incredible. I immediately told her how it affected and absolutely pivoted our lives. And here I am 2 days later recording a podcast with her. So social media is not a time waster. It's not something to do when you're bored. It can be, but I firmly believe it's a tool. And just like any other tool, a shovel, a hammer, you can use it for bad, but you can use it for the most amazing things. And all those things we talked about to better your life, you can do that with social media. So take advantage of it. So awesome. That's why we're here. Natalie, what is the best way, or the most convenient way, for everybody to find out more who you are and find your book?
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, NatalieJill.com is my website. My book is Aging in Reverse. Aging in Reverse. You can get it anywhere books are sold. I just hit stores last week. My podcast is Leveling Up, Creating Everything from Nothing. And then social media is Natalie Jill Fit.
Perfect. I love it. And we're going to get that book over here too. We're going to add it to the stack. I'm sure my wife will love to read it too. And I will love to read it as well, because we double down on every single book we get.
Good,
so
I love it.
Awesome. Natalie, thank you so much, and have the best day ever. We'll see you later.
Awesome. Thank you.